Namaste, everyone, and welcome to today's special explainer. Today, we're taking a fascinating trip back in time by unpacking a really powerful reflection that's been basically echoing all over social media. It's all about one very specific group, the generation born between 1955 and 1980. Now, whether you actually belong to this generation yourself, or maybe you're just looking to better understand your parents or grandparents, we're going to break down the memories, the economics, and the major cultural shifts of that era. We'll explore exactly why this particular time frame is viewed with such intense nostalgia and honestly, what it tells us about how human connection has fundamentally evolved over the years. Okay, let's dive into this. The entire heart of our exploration today centers around one incredibly nostalgic declaration from our source material. We also had an era. This isn't just some wistful look at the past. It's a real rallying cry for a generation that feels their specific way of life was totally distinct from how we live today. You can almost hear the pride and maybe a little bit of wistfulness right behind those words. It really serves as the emotional core for everything we are about to explore.
Section 1. Setting the Era, the 1955 to 1980 generation.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this era was anchored in a very, very specific economic reality. We definitely aren't talking about digital wallets or swiping credit cards here. This was the era of the 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, and 50 paise coins. These tiny, almost forgotten denominations represented what the source calls the currency of innocence. The purchasing power of just a single coin dictated the treats you could buy, and holding that physical metal right in your hand was this universal childhood experience that really defined the economic boundaries of the whole era.
Moving right along to Section 2, the joy in simplicity. An analog lifestyle.
In this completely analog world, everyday routines were actually elevated to vivid festivals and dreams. Take covering school books, for example. Putting those fresh covers on new books for the school year was this highly anticipated tactile ritual. Then there were transistors and tape recorders. These weren't just plain old electronics. They were the highly coveted stuff of dreams, pure physical objects of entertainment. And out in the neighborhood streets, gully cricket was the absolute ultimate community pastime. These weren't just passing activities, you see. They were the defining cultural touchstones of an entire youth.
All right, I want you to think about this number for a second. Just the number 3. For this generation, this represents a very specific, slightly humorous, and incredibly relatable visual from that era. 3 friends balancing together on a single bicycle. It's honestly the perfect metaphor for the time, making do with limited resources, relying completely on each other, and just sharing a simple physical journey together.
Which brings us to Section 3, Human Connection, Relationships Without Tech.
And this brilliantly illustrates a truly stark contrast. Imagine a world with the complete and utter absence of today's communication staples. I'm talking no mobile phones, no internet, no WhatsApp, none of it. Yet the result wasn't isolation. Instead, it was deep, lifelong friendships. People would just arrive at their friends' houses completely unannounced. Those spontaneous visits, they simply wouldn't happen in today's highly scheduled, digitally coordinated world. It was an era where the lack of digital convenience actually forced a much deeper, authentic, physical connection.
The social fabric was just entirely different back then. Neighbors weren't just the people who happened to live next door. They were treated as an extension of the family itself. Community borders were incredibly fluid. And even when it came to discipline, there was a completely different dynamic. Authority figures, like strict teachers handing down a scolding or physical discipline, were viewed with a sense of communal reverence and an underlying foundation of deep respect that really defined the social order of the era.
Let's move on to Section 4, the Great Shift, technology versus memories.
So the crucial point is this fascinating juxtaposition right here. Today's generation obviously possesses an absolute abundance of technology, but the 1955 to 1980 generation possesses an abundance of memories. This generation defines its true wealth not by material goods or digital convenience, but purely by lived experiential memories. It's a fundamental shift in how a generation actually measures a life fully lived.
But, this generation didn't just freeze in time. Actually, scratch that. They went on a massive journey of adaptation. They struggled through some really monumental societal and technological changes, learned entirely new ways of doing things, and actively embraced a modernizing world. Yet, their greatest point of pride is that through all of that adaptation, they managed to retain their foundational cultural values, their sanskar. They evolved with the times, but they absolutely didn't lose their core identity.
And that brings us to Section 5, the final claim, the last true childhood.
The reflection we're analyzing leaves us with this sweeping, unvarnished claim.
We are the last generation to live a real childhood and maintain real relationships. This is exactly how this generation views its legacy, right before the dawn of the digital revolution. In their eyes, the introduction of the screen fundamentally altered the very definition of what a real childhood and a real connection actually is.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question to consider. Do we have more technology today, but fewer real memories? In gaining the whole world through our screens, we might have lost a very specific type of magic. Now, whether you agree with their assessment or not, it offers a really powerful lens through which to view our modern lives. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this has given you something profound to think about regarding your own era, your own memories, and the true cost of modern convenience. Until next time, keep learning.